And the ARA.
And we're recording? Yes.
Awesome. All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get this started. I'm sure we're going to have some more people coming in here as we go, but I want to make sure we had plenty of time for our keynote speakers to share their product and their process for creating it. So I want to first do a quick introduction of them, and then we'll have a little over an hour for them to present before we get to our final three presenters from the college. So first of all, thank you for being here. We are going to be hearing a talk about AI and student writing, preventing plagiarism and enabling responsible use. And Victor is the co-founder and CEO of Scrible Incorporated, an ed tech company addressing the research and writing skills crisis among US students. Inspired by his own struggles with online information, he founded Scrible and grew it into an award-recognized platform used by thousands of educators and students, supported by grants from the NSF and US Department of Education with nationwide impact. And joining him is Blake Thomas, also head of AI from Scrible. Blake brings over 2 decades of experience delivering impactful technology solutions and frequently speaks at industry events. In EdTech, he's led cross-functional work spanning product launches, development, security, and compliance, infrastructure, data, AI, and accessibility. So we're going to be recording this. We'll be sharing this out to our YouTube channel later, so you can also connect back to it. And I know Victor was interested also in potentially reaching out to some people to get their feedback on what they think about the product as well. So join me in thanking them and welcoming them for our keynote today, and I'm looking forward to hearing what they have to share.
All right. Well, great to be with you all today. Thanks so much for this invitation. We're really excited to talk to you and share some of the things that we've learned by working in the kind of research and writing space for quite a while now, for quite a few years, and how that has been impacted, frankly, by AI, particularly generative AI, in the classroom. So I want to make sure I do a quick check. Everybody can hear me okay? Maybe give me a thumbs up if I can get that. Okay, great. Thank you. It's always good to get when you're in a setting like this, it's good to get that confirmation from folks in the room. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we can dive right in. So let me do that.
We can see that, Victor.
Okay, do you see the slide that says Power Friday at the top?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, well, great to meet you all again. As Bill mentioned, I'm one of the co-founders of Scrible. I started the company because I needed something like what we're about to show you for my own work. And then Blake is joining me as well. And there's a slide on which we're both going to talk a little bit ourselves. So I will just kind of get to that, and Blake will be able to introduce himself at that point as well. But a quick agenda for the presentation and this time together is we're going to do intros first, as I just mentioned, and then we're going to talk about AI and writing in sort of 2 sides of the coin. One is how do we work to prevent AI plagiarism, which has been kind of a hair on fire problem for educators globally, particularly English teachers in K-12 and instructors in higher ed, but I'd argue it isn't just limited to them. And then we're going to kind of flip the coin over and talk about how you can actually use AI responsibly in the research and writing process, and kind of what we've built and how we can help enable that. And we would love to have your feedback as well as any questions you have as well at the end. So quick intro for myself, and then I'll hand over the mic to Blake so he can introduce himself. As Bill mentioned, I'm one of the co-founders of the business. Again, I started this because I needed something of this nature originally for myself as a student long ago. And we've actually been doing this work for quite a while, so the product has evolved, and you'll sort of see what it is today. But I'm happy to talk about the origin story and where we started during Q&A, if that's interesting to anybody. And then something that's just kind of a fun fact is I was a former high school debater. And for anybody that has been exposed to that activity, it is something that involves a lot of research and writing. So I think I was almost predisposed, if you will, to kind of do work in this arena from a pretty early age. And I think that's actually really helped inform not only my role, but the way that we think about how students work with evidence and do sort of source-based writing. So that's a quick little tidbit about me, and I'll let Blake go ahead and introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, a lot of kind of parallels with what Victor had to say. I in high school I was a drama geek or a drama kid, and there was a lot of I did an event called Extemporaneous Speaking, which, as some of you may know, Victor certainly knows, involves a lot of research and having well-organized files. And so when I had the opportunity to work with, in the capacity of head of AI with Scrible, I was really excited about that. And I see it as a tool that really does kind of really does feature responsible use of AI, which as a technologist is something that I'm pretty excited about, because I see a lot of kind of anxiety about that in the industry. And the other thing too is I've spent the last decade in ed tech developing tools for teachers. My partner at home is a ELA teacher. And so there's nothing more rewarding than working for the folks that you care about and doing something that you see as really improving the landscape for how technology can be applied. I'll stop gilding the lily and just say thank you for having me and having us.
Great. Well, thank you, Blake. And then just a little quick couple bullet points as an overview for what we're going to talk about and what we do as an organization. These days, I'd like to point out that Scribble is kind of the first show your work writing process platform. Why and how that is will become clear when we kind of walk you through some of the steps that students take in the platform. But it is something that really supports writing instruction and responsible AI use. And obviously that second part is something that's new as of a few years ago, post ChatGPT launching. We work really closely with the National Writing Project. So if any of you are familiar with that really well-respected national nonprofit, we are very fortunate to have worked with them. And one of the ways in which we work with them was under a competitive grant from the U.S. Department of Education. It was an SBIR grant that concluded last summer after about 2.5 years of work together. And we're going to be launching some new capabilities for the coming school year based on that research validated work. But we've been very fortunate through our existence to be really supported by some one federal agencies, the National Science Foundation and the U.S. Department of Ed. All right, so let's get right into it. How is it that we can potentially help prevent AI plagiarism? And before I kind of get into how we support that, I want to kind of frame this. I'm assuming at this point in the game, a few years after ChatGPT launched, everybody's sort of familiar with the problem, but I do like to do a little bit of recap and show some research studies that have been put out there over the last few years regarding this, because I think it's just good practice to kind of cover that territory quickly. So before I get into that, I do want to say that I think that I like to frame our work by saying that we really believe that writing builds critical thinking. And I think that's a really important thing to say, because right now and for the past couple of years, unfortunately, I've run into people, particularly in leadership in K-12 districts, that sometimes sort of question whether or not this is something that you really need to focus on anymore, since the machine can do it. And we believe that it is important, and it is important that humans actually retain critical thinking skills, despite the amazing rise of what generative AI is able to do with text. And I like to quote David McCullough, who says, "Writing is thinking. To write well is to think clearly, and that's why it's so hard." I think it's a really succinct, nice way to kind of describe the value of why this is a foundational skill set that we should still retain and develop in students. And so, what is the big deal? The big deal from our perspective, and I think that's shared by a lot of educators, is that essentially when you outsource the work to the machine, students end up bypassing the productive struggle that develops those critical thinking and cognitive skills that we've always associated with the writing process, right? Things like discernment, or being able to evaluate evidence, the ability to kind of like manage transitions between ideas, all those kinds of things. And there's a lot of them that are baked into the workflow as you're developing, a piece of writing. And so that's the concern. And I think in the beginning, after ChatGPT launched, we unfortunately in this country did a lot of what we do in the political sphere, which is kind of went to our polar extremes of, ban it or embrace it. And I think the reality is, just like in real life, the truth is someplace in between. And part of that means that you actually have to acknowledge the downside risk, which a lot of AI folks sometimes don't like to talk about. They like to talk about all the positive benefits, but we're a little different. We like to actually acknowledge what the problem is, and fortunately, it's something we think we can help with. So we don't hide from it. We actually shine a light on it, and we say to even our friends that are maybe at other AI oriented companies, that you really have to acknowledge this issue, because teachers are facing this problem in the classroom every day. And even though it can be really, generative AI can be really helpful for things like lesson planning and productivity, at the end of the day, when they're seeing this issue arise in their students' work, you're not going to be able to bring them along to where you want them to be in terms of just really embracing it, because every day they're dealing with this issue. So the best way to actually bring them along is actually to head on address this issue, as opposed to kind of ignoring it and focusing on AI's upsides. And so, that is, as you all know, a concern that's been out there for a while. What I like to see was that, there was a study that was done by MIT that many of you may have seen a couple of summers ago. I think it was last summer or the summer before, that got a fair amount of media attention. including the professor at MIT getting, I think, interviewed on CNN. And the quote you're seeing here on the right-hand side is related to, is basically from a Time.com article about that research study. Now, the study, admittedly from the professor, from the researcher, is a small size because it was one of these studies where they went deep, so they couldn't go really broad because otherwise I'm sure it would have been much more expensive and taken a lot longer. But they had a small n size in terms of number of participants, but I think it basically sort of showed what many of us have been concerned about. And so for those that are not familiar with this study, basically they had 54 subjects broken up into 3 groups. One would look at one, and they all had to write 4 cycles of SAT essays. And they have the 3 groups that they were broken into. One of them had the ability to use ChatGPT, one only Google search, and one nothing at all. And unsurprising to I think many of us who are in the classroom or work closely with folks in the classroom, I'll just read kind of what it says here, bolded. ChatGPT users had the lowest brain engagement and consistently underperformed at neurolinguistic and behavioral levels. And frankly, by the end of that sort of 4-cycle essay exercise, it says that ChatGPT users got lazier with subsequent essay and often resorting to copy and paste by the end of the study. So at this point in the game, not really shocking to anybody, but kind of nice that it was actually proven out with EEG scans, with brain scans. So you can actually measure it, and it's less of a, well, this is what I think is happening, but you actually get to sort of see it in terms of what's going on in the brain. And so, in the future, I imagine that there may be more studies like that or other things that kind of back that up at a larger scale. But I think it was a groundbreaking study at the time, despite its small size. Now, I think as everybody knows, the, kind of go-to response to this problem in the beginning after ChatGPT launched was to try to find some sort of system that you could run the papers through that would detect whether or not the text was generated by a machine or a human. And I call this a bit of a Pavlovian response. The reason is pre-ChatGPT, the way that students would take the shortcut and avoid the work would be to basically try to find maybe a paper online or some text online that they could copy and paste and use that way, right? I call that classic plagiarism. And for classic plagiarism, educators were used to kind of classic plagiarism solutions or detectors, things like Turnitin, and it was probably the dominant one that most folks had heard of and used, but there are other ones out there as well. And for that problem, that type of solution worked quite well because really it was a text matching problem, right? Basically, you could see when you ran a student's paper through there that, hey, Johnny's second paragraph from this paper that he just submitted looks like Billy's third paragraph from a neighboring school district 2 years ago or something like that. And because it was a text matching problem and there was something you could compare to, it was something that worked with a high level of fidelity. The problem is now, as everybody knows, when generative AI spits out text, there's nothing to compare to. And so the systems, the kind of Pavlovian response of, hey, give me a system I can run the paper through was very understandable from how we've all been trained to think about things in this realm. But the reality is that this new AI plagiarism problem is actually different, right? The problem under the hood is different and there's nothing to compare to. But despite that, a lot of systems out there try to develop these AI text detection tools. And what we've seen now after a few years of them is that, unfortunately, they've been sort of unreliable or manipulable. And so you all may have seen this with students, or you may have actually heard examples. There's been a bunch in the media. We've personally talked to folks in different districts where they've run into this problem. And I don't want to basically, say that the folks that are making these systems are, not telling us the full truth. But I do think that even if in a testing environment, when they're sort of testing their tools, they work really well, maybe at a high level of fidelity. I think a real problem is that once these tools get put out into the wild, what students do with them in the real world actually makes it possible to potentially break or manipulate these tools. And so, for example, this middle study talks about how the detectors are not reliable in practical scenarios where you can use things like paraphrasing tools to be able to game the detectors. And so, unfortunately, even if they work well in a lab environment or in a sterile environment, you have things like AI humanizers or paraphrasing tools that end up really bringing down the reliability of these text detection tools. So that's been a problem, and we find teachers still going to that oftentimes today because they just don't know what to do, and they feel like this at least gives them something to do. And unfortunately, we feel like there's a real challenge here because it really potentially provides a false sense of security. And I've heard personally examples of really sticky situations that have arisen as a result. One example I'll give you is that, there's a large district in Georgia where I met the person that actually leads their online virtual school system. And they had, I think about 2 years ago, 20 students' papers that got zeros on papers because I think it was one of these detection tools said that the text in those papers was AI generated. And it was going to get messy. I think it was headed on its way to litigation with a lot of parents that were unhappy about their children getting called out. Um, and what ended up happening was that they found out that the reason why those papers were flagged was because the students had used Grammarly, which the teacher had said was okay. And so, the text detection tool recognized Grammarly generated text that was allowed by the teacher as AI generated, and that caused a really sticky situation. And there are lots of variations of that kind of an example that have been happening for the past couple of years. So it puts teachers in a really difficult situation where if they feel like this work might not be done authentically, they don't know whether they call it out. If they call it out and they get burned, it becomes really hard. Now, the other thing that a lot of folks thought in the beginning was, well, geez, I know my students. I can tell if it's their voice or not. And I've definitely met people who I think do a decent job, at least anecdotally from what I've heard, because they're familiar enough with LLMs and they kind of tell if there are, certain tells that the text might have. But most folks, I think, are not necessarily super adept at this. And this study's now a couple of years old, but it basically said that even experienced teachers have a hard time detecting AI-generated text, and that teachers are, as it says here, overconfident in their judgments when they're making that discernment. And frankly, I think that this is going to get harder over time as the large language models improve, and even as people develop tools that maybe a student could use, for example, to say, here's a couple of things that I've written that make it sound more like what I sound like. So I think this is going to get harder as time goes on. So there's more I can say about that, but I'll just stop there on that. So anyway, what do we do to get to the point here? And I think what we are happy to say is that when we're talking to educators in K-12 and even in higher ed, we say, like, just because detectors didn't work out, that's not the end of the story, right? So we realized very early on that the reason why detectors struggled was they really only ever see the end work product of the writing process. They only ever see the text that's in the paper at the end. If instead of that, they could, you could actually see and evaluate or assess the entire process, then this should be a more solvable problem. And so we very early on, I would say a couple months after ChatGPT launched, basically took this theory and kind of took it to district leaders in K-12 and sort of said, here's how we're thinking about the problem. We're thinking that if we shift the assessment from the end work product, which is what the detectors rely on to shift that to the process, could that be better? And universally, the feedback we got was yes, that should be helpful. And why that is will become clear in a minute here when I show you how that works exactly. But what the feedback we got was this is what we should be doing anyway to support good writing instruction. And so we've been preaching process over product as the best practice for writing assessment in the AI era. And what we're able to do is actually make that writing process visible to teachers in a way that historically either wasn't possible or frankly was prohibitively sort of tedious and labor intensive. And so what you're seeing here on the right-hand side is a graph where we're able to show a teacher for every student what kind of time they've been spending on tasks in the pre-writing and the early stages of the writing process. So for example, research, analysis, synthesis, and writing. And as a teacher, you can look at this and sort of say, okay, if I see there's no pre-writing work going on, maybe no research analysis or synthesis, and all of a sudden, the student submits an assignment that looks pretty good, and there's a lot of writing done at the end, that might be a red flag that it's a copy and paste job out of ChatGPT or an AI chatbot. And so how are we able to get to this data? That's what I'm going to show you next, kind of walk you through a little bit of the workflow. But the bottom line is that what we're able to do in the writing realm to address the AI plagiarism problem is that, what we've always asked students to do in math, which is have them show their work. So we call Scribble kind of like a show your work writing platform as a result. All right, so let me quickly walk you through kind of how it works on the student side and a little bit on the educator side so you understand how we're able to get to that data in that graph. So on the student side, I'm going to walk you just through an example of a student working on a research paper where there's sort of three phases. And so there's three screenshots, and what you're seeing here is the first phase for that with the first screenshot. So I'm a student out there writing a paper about exploring Mars, let's say, and I come across an article on the web like the one that you see here. As a student, I would click on the Scribble Chrome extension, or we've got extensions for other browsers as well. And when I do that, three things happen. First, this article gets saved to my Scribble library in the cloud in about 1 or 2 clicks. And I'll show you what that library looks like in the next screenshot. But basically that curates the article. This one right here, it curates the article to my library. The second thing that happens when I click on that browser extension is that we float this overlay over the article with the toolbar and the sidebar that gives a student a number of different tools to close read the article, to annotate evidence, to leave comments, and there's a set of assistive features there as well. Basically, that gives them the ability to annotate their evidence. The third thing that happens when they click on that browser extension is that we extract citation information directly from the article and save it with the article to their library in the cloud. Now, that's not shown in this screenshot because we're showing the comment sidebar. But if you were to click on this double quote icon, you'd see the citation sidebar, and that's where you'd see a bunch of the citation fields for this article kind of pre-filled. So that's kind of phase one. You're out there doing research. These are the things that happen to help kind of capture, annotate, and cite the content. Now, phase two is I've done that work, and I'm now, as a student, going to my Scribble library for this particular assignment, and I'm able to see a variety of content in there. So I can see my sources, my annotations, my outline, my bibliography, my documents, and even some data around the kind of sources I've used. On the sources tab, I'm able to see all of my essentially sources that I've curated. They could be web pages like the one that we were just looking at. If I were to scroll down in this library, you'd see some PDFs. There's a book source that's been saved as well. To the right of that is the annotations tab, where as a student, I can see all the notes and highlights, like these annotations that I've made across all of my sources in a list view. The analogy I give folks is that the sources tab is like in the old days, we'd print articles out and put them in manila folders. And the annotations tab is like in the old days, like librarians would have students write down their evidence on note cards. So two different levels of granularity for the kind of work that's being done and how to look at your content. And in both cases, whether you're looking at the whole article or just the annotations, all the content is full text searchable and taggable. So as a student, you can really quickly and easily find just the parts that you need when you're later creating your outline or your bibliography. And under the outline editor or under the outline tab, we have an outline editor where it's really easy to drag and drop your annotations directly into an outline editor. The bibliography tab has a bibliography editor, easy to quickly generate a works cited page with a few clicks. Under the documents tab, we embed the Google Docs viewer or the Word Online viewer so that all of your work is in one place. And I know we're in the weeds here, and I'm going to explain a little bit at the end about why we get into the weeds, but the gist of it is that at least this part of it really helps students stay organized because everything gets saved in one place. And then phase three is that I'm actually drafting my paper. And so as a student, I may be, in Google Docs or Microsoft Word. We have integrations with both word processors that are called an add-on for Docs and an add-in for Word. And what you're seeing here is our Scribble Writer Google Docs add-on for Google Docs. And what we're able to do with this real estate that Google gives us in the word processor is taking some of the key tabs in your Scribble library, slimming them down and embedding them right here. And basically the student can then use these tabs while they're writing their paper. And so under the sources tab, for example, if they think, I remember highlighting something about Egypt, because I think the article talked about how the surface of Mars looks like, Egypt. You could go to the sources tab, do a search for the word Egypt, and we do a full text search of all your library content, and then we'll show you just the highlights, for example, that have that word in them. You can click on a little button, you'll take that highlighted text out of the article, drop it into the paper, put it in quotes, and then insert it in text parenthetical citation and update the bibliography on the last page of the document. So just really makes the process of bringing that pre-writing content into the draft much, much easier and smoother. And the reason we do all this, to talk about the weeds, is that historically students, I think we all, frankly, have lost a lot of time in what I call manual information processing, where there's a lot of copying and pasting and formatting and organizing. And that's all necessary historically, but it's not really the main reason why teachers typically ask students to engage in the writing process, right? They really want them to do the critical thinking around the content and the arguments that are being made. But unfortunately, historically, you lose so much time in what I call the sort of mundane, lower cognitive value work of organizing and formatting and all that, that you oftentimes, as a student, get squeezed on the critical thinking, higher order cognitive work that you really want to be doing. And so part of what we're doing here is offloading some of that lower cognitive work to software using the power of the cloud and SaaS, so that students can really spend more time thinking about the quality of the sources, the strength of their evidence, the wording of their arguments and the things of that nature. All right, I'm going to move along here because I know we're a little tight on time, but I'm just really quickly will say that bringing it all together for the student is a benefit for the teachers and the educators as well, because once you've consolidated all the work for the student to help them stay organized, that now means that as a teacher, all the work is in one place for me to be able to review. And so that can be a game changer for providing formative feedback in a way that historically either wasn't possible or is very disjointed and time consuming for teachers. And so in our world, when students are actually doing their work, obviously it's all getting saved to this library that I showed you, and that's what I'm showing you here again. But what ends up happening is that when you have an assignment in our system as an educator, we create one of these libraries for every assignment for every student. And you as the teacher have the ability to jump into every student's assignment library at any point during the assignment and see the work as it's happening in real time. And so I can jump in this example into David's assignment library for this assignment, and I can see his sources, his annotations, his outline, his bibliography. We have a feedback messaging system that allows you to actually target feedback to each one of these tabs. And I think what's unique about this is that historically, when people think about writing feedback, their brain understandably goes to the end work product, right? In the old days, red pen on paper, or these days, it might be leaving comments in Google Docs or Microsoft Word. And that's fine. That's good. We don't think that's a bad thing. But as folks in academia typically know, when you do the kind of writing we ask students to do, particularly, in secondary, particularly in high school and even in college, and I'd argue even in the workplace, a lot of it is source-based writing, right? Where you have to find some evidence and be able to make a case with it. And what that means is that the kind of work you do in the pre-writing process, i.e. what kinds of sources you have, what kind of evidence you find, has a heavy influence on the final work product. And so if you don't have good sources, you're going to have a hard time having a strong paper with strong arguments at the end. And unfortunately, historically, there's never been a centralized place for teachers to be able to see that before it actually gets added to the paper and it's already kind of late in the game. And I think that's a gap that we fill. We basically give teachers the ability to have early visibility into the process and help students maybe course correct or make different decisions about what sources to use and whatnot before they've even written the first page in the document, or the first word in the document. So I think that fills an interesting gap. And then because we make the work itself available, that's kind of one value. But the other value that we're able to provide is then being able to take data from all that work and being able to present it to teachers in a really rich set of graphs and dashboards related to the work that the students are doing. So at an individual student level, we can show you, for example, in this bottom right graph, how many, for each student, how they're progressing against certain goals that were set for the assignment, like having a certain number of curated or cited sources, words written, and so forth. These pie charts actually give you a breakdown roughly of where students are getting their information. So are they getting it from Wikipedia? Are they getting it from government websites? Are they using databases? Which databases are they using? And that's a little bit of work we've done, early work we've done in the area of media literacy, where we're going to be doing more in the future. But it really gives you kind of an individual student view into that pre-writing work in a way that, again, historically either wasn't possible for teachers, or if they try to stay on top of it, it ends up being very time consuming. At the top graph here, what you're seeing is more of a 30,000-foot level, classroom level view of who's on target and off target for different steps in the assignment flow. So we can show you how many students are on target or off target for having created the assignment or met certain goals along the way. What's nice about this is that you can click on any one of these bars and it'll actually show you below this graph which students make up that bar. So as a teacher, you then have the ability to focus your time and energy on the students maybe that need the most attention because they're falling behind, or maybe they're procrastinating, or maybe they're stuck on a particular step. And then this last graph that's in the middle, we've already talked about it on that previous slide. But I will just say quickly that we did launch that to try to address the AI plagiarism problem, but that's not the only way you can use that data, right? You can also look at it and say, hey, I see that, David here keeps doing a little bit of writing and then he has to go back to do more research. Maybe I could recommend to him as his teacher that he just take the time to do it properly up front so that he can then sort of be done with that step in a major way and move on to, doing later work. There's just other ways to use that data depending on what the student's doing, other than, trying to catch them or look at it for the AI plagiarism reason that we originally launched it, which I think is interesting. And so anyway, hopefully this helps you understand how it is that we're able to gather the data. And in the interest of time, I won't sort of play this video for you, but this is a video from a teacher that we work with in Utah, where she basically says in her words what I'm telling you now, and it's always better to hear it directly from a teacher, but you can look at that little quote there. She says, I really recommend Scribble because it allows me to see my students' work as they are crafting an essay. So I know it's their authentic work. By the time they're done, I saw the process be built, and I know that the work is their own. And that's really what we're trying to get to, is just kind of helping to have that safeguard for teachers so that they can have confidence that the students are actually doing the work authentically and most importantly, learning the authentic skills that we want them to learn along the way. So that's one side of the coin, is how do we help mitigate the AI plagiarism problem? And I always tell people, you don't need to use Scribble necessarily to implement this strategy of shifting from the end work product to writing as a process. But assessing the process is a heavier lift than looking at the end product alone, as we've done historically. And what we're able to do, because of the way that we've constructed the system, is actually help make it a lighter, heavier lift, if you will. And so we're proud of that. And there's a lot of educators that we're working with that are seeing that value. So I'll stop there and maybe hand over the mic to Blake to really talk about what comes next in terms of how you can use AI responsibly. And Blake, I'm happy to keep showing the slides if you want, or if you want to take it over and do it from your end, since you're going to be doing a demo anyway, you're welcome to do that.
I'm going to have you show the next couple of slides, and then we'll bounce out, and I'll do the demo.
Okay, great. Give me one second.
Yep.
Stop sharing, and then unexpectedly I got logged out. So all right, I'm back now.
Yep.
Sorry about that.
Oh.
Let me reshare. Okay, I think you see the slide now.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, great.
So yeah, so what I want to do is show you some of the characteristics of this process that really do promote responsible use of AI. Next slide. So it's a really tricky thing. Obviously, AI is a very powerful tool, or can be a very powerful tool. Generative AI more generally. This is a reference to the previous study that we brought up. Students attempt to use GPT-4 as a crutch, or no, sorry, this is a different study. Crutch during practice problem sessions, and when successful, perform worse on their own. That's really kind of the issue. We really do want to embrace that kind of productive struggle that encourages students to think critically. And while AI is a useful tool, we don't want that crutch to become a kind of a permanent thing. Next slide. So we have a chatbot. Reese, short for Research Assistant, is something that we've built into the product, and we've built some guardrails around how Reese can interact with students, or how students can interact with Reese, that intends to kind of promote that critical thinking while still allowing them to use a useful tool. So it is embedded in the library, as you can see from the screenshot that's kind of highlighted there. It does enable conversation about your sources, so students can ask. Currently, they can ask factual questions about their sources. Common example here, we use Mars a lot because we're very interested in Mars exploration, but would be, summarize the history of the exploration of human exploration of Mars, or something along those kinds of lines. That will generate a factual answer from Reese, and I'll sort of demo that in a little bit. It solves some of the problems with consumer chatbots. So ChatGPT is kind of the canonical example here, and I'll show you a little bit more about that, but I'll mention those really quickly. One of those is hallucinations. So there have been numerous studies that have shown that generative AI will sometimes, in an attempt to make the user happy or satisfy the user, will kind of make up things. And then we also face the traditional kind of where your sources for this information. For a industry kind of standard chatbot like ChatGPT, it's the entire internet, and as we know, the internet is full of very truthful people. No, in all seriousness, like, the quality of the source matters there. And then the other thing is if you talk to a lot of students, they don't always understand. I mean, they have a kind of vague moral sense or ethical sense for what plagiarism is and isn't, but they don't always understand where that line is and what it is. And so giving them an opportunity to use a very powerful and useful tool in an academic context in a way that's appropriate, that has those kinds of guardrails around it, is actually a very helpful formative experience, just generally. Next slide. So Victor likes to talk about several points, and I'm going to touch on these in the demo, but basically credibility, traceability, savability, citability, accessibility, auditability, and controllability. So credibility is essentially, I don't have my notes in front of me, but credibility is essentially, where is this coming from? Is it hallucinating? Is it making it up? Is it embedded in the sources? I'll show you this a little bit in a little bit later, but that also speaks to traceability. Can the chatbot tell you where it got the answer from? Savability, we may want to refer back to that chat and even cite it, and there's some features around there. Citability, I mentioned we may want to cite it. Accessibility, there are some accessibility features in that support differently abled users. Let's see. Sorry, I just got a notification. Auditability. Victor showed you a couple of those screenshots. I'll show you a little bit more that show kind of actually, I'll show you the actual AI auditability piece, so teachers can view that. And then controllability. We want to enable educators to be able to kind of manage access to this. So next slide. Oh, yeah. Answers based only on curated sources, etc. So these are those kind of dimensions that I outlined that I'm going to demonstrate a little bit. Next slide. Okay, this is the demo part. Really quick note, those videos are just there in case we had some issues demoing. I'm not actually going to use them, but if you want to take a look at them later, I did some screen recordings. What I'm going to do right now is actually share my screen and walk y'all through some of this, some of these characteristics really quick.
Great. And you're welcome to share and walk them through the demo.
Yep, I have to just allow Microsoft to share my content. Okay, that's less than ideal. I have to quit and rejoin Teams. I'm very sorry. I'll be back in 2 seconds.
No worries, this happens.
So Victor, while he's doing that, I had a question for you, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah, let's do it.
So you're doing a lot around research papers and things like that. I was an English literature major, so I wrote endless papers about analyzing literature where it's essentially one source that you're pointing back to, the story or the novel or the poem or whatever you're analyzing. Do you see a way that this could function around that?
Yeah. Typically, when you are looking at kind of a literature example like that, they're oftentimes longer form content, like a book, for example. When we started, we were focused more on, I would call it shorter form multi-source content, right? And that's kind of what you see in the examples that we're giving. But unsurprisingly, we're getting requests from teachers that says, hey, I do want my students to be able to reference a book or something like that. And so we've built an option in the platform where I think we call it a quote manager, but it's basically an opportunity for you to be able to capture passages from longer form content, from books essentially, or even offline content. So there's a way to do that in our platform. We don't actually have you upload like a whole book. It's a little bit overkill. But if there are particular passages you need to reference, you can actually manually type them in or copy and paste them into some fields that allow you to kind of capture the content you need from a longer single source. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. Looks like Blake is back.
I'm back and I have a browser window for y'all. So this is the teacher's view while they're creating an assignment. And I've taken the liberty of creating a lot of this ahead of time, but I did want to show y'all a couple of the features here. Sources and annotations. So you can enable or disable this. This is one of those goals that Victor was talking about. We can require students to have a particular number. We can even create an annotation key, so different annotations might signal certain things. That's not really the thrust of it, but I like those features, so I thought I'd mention it. Same thing with outline. Same thing with bibliography. You can choose what particular standard or style you're using there. Same thing with the minimum number of sources in the bibliography. But to the point that I really wanted to talk about Reese. So we can enable or disable this. Right now it's disabled, but if I click this, you'll note the first thing is safety contact. And you might ask why. I'm actually going to demonstrate this in a second, but depending on the kind of questions or queries that a student is asking, you may actually want to be notified of that as an instructor. And so this is one of those guardrails that we're talking about. Right now, what are the AI use guidelines? This is just some guidance that is communicated directly to the student in an attempt to be a little bit funny and introduce some levity. I referenced Google's "Don't Be Evil." So I'm going to go ahead and save and go on. I'm going to distribute this. Actually, I don't have to finish this. I have another assignment, or a assignment already created. So this is the student view of that assignment that I just created, essentially. So if I pull it up, you'll note that I have no sources. Now I'm going to pretend to be a little, for a moment, to pretend to be a somewhat distractible or distracted high school student. And so I've just received an assignment from my teacher. There are no sources. Well, maybe I want to see what it's about. Okay, let's study the history of human exploration of Mars. I see these goals here, etc. So, okay, I need to do a little bit of research about Mars. But like I said, I'm a distractible student, and I actually, instead of thinking about Mars right now, want to think about K-pop, because I'm a huge K-pop fan, and there's this article that I've been meaning to read. And oh, that's in my library. Oh, maybe I've actually gotten some work done. Well, you know, I need to refocus here on my work. Oh, did I not annotate it?
It might be a different library.
Yeah, change library. Nope, not. Sorry about this. Change library, explore Mars, move. Okay, let's make sure it's there now. Okay, I've got my BTS article here. Maybe I didn't mean to add that to my library, but you know what? I'm a busy student. I have a lot of things to do in terms of reading articles about BTS. Let me just do a quick Google search and pull up a couple of articles. Oh, Wikipedia seems helpful. Let's open that one, and NASA. So let's see. I've got some stuff here. That's great. I don't think I've added it to my library. Well, I did add this. Let me go back here. Okay, so I haven't actually added these to my library yet. I still just have the BTS. So if I go here and let's say I'm just in a rush and I want to get this kind of done. Hey, can you summarize the history of Mars exploration? And so one of the things that we talk about is the credibility. It's not going to generate answers when it doesn't actually have sources in the library. So this stands in stark contrast to something like ChatGPT that is going to use the whole internet. This is very much a walled garden. This creates that kind of responsible use experience for students. So I'm not going to get just random answers or hallucinations from this. Okay, so Reese has told me that I don't have anything in my library about Mars so much as I have something about BTS. Well, goodness, I need to go do some actual exploration. So I have right here something that I can add to my library. I can also add this one to my library as well. Change library. Let me make sure it's in the right one. Okay. And let me make sure that this is in there. Oh, it's already in there. And then, did not mean to open that. Let me go. Okay, so I have all three of these articles, including the BTS article for some reason still. I could type this same question again, but I could also just do that. Sorry, it's loading.
It's okay. It's indexing the sources, so it just takes a second.
Yeah.
That's what those icons mean below the check marks on
Yep.
the left.
As a quick note, this is, I'm a little clumsy doing this demo. Victor is very practiced, as well as very knowledgeable about, no, I was going to make a joke there, but I was going to say BTS, but no, just Mars exploration. Okay, so I believe we have all three indexed. So I'm going to go ahead and ask again, can you summarize the history of Mars exploration? Okay, here we go. We have an actual useful factual answer based on the sources that I have collected. So let's go really quick to this one. Launch windows, past missions. Okay, this is interesting. Let's say I wanted to know what the first actual landing on Mars is. Okay, so the first contact with the surface were 2 Soviet probes. Oh, that seems like a particularly key event. Let me go ahead and just note that really quick. And so now that I've added that as an annotation in my library as a key event, I can go here and I see, oh, I've got this first contact with the surface, etc. I have this quote right here. So I can even look at view in-text citation. So this is the annotation, this is the in-text citation, this is the quote and citation. There's some functionality around dragging and dropping these in the outline, but for in the interest of time, I'm going to kind of skip over that and go directly to, oh, actually one feature I did want to show you really quick, and I hope that the screen share includes sound. You know what, I'm going to skip it. I'll just say that if I were to, for instance, highlight this, I can.
The 7 RM, Jin, Suga, J-Hope, Jimin, V, and Jungkook had been in the band together since the early 20s.
So I think you get the idea. It will actually read these items for me, and I can even translate or define terms. There's some other accessibility features. I had configured it with a very delightful Irish accented voice, but we're going to go ahead and call that part good. Another thing that I can do here is I can go and save this particular chat as a source. So if I save that to my library, can you summarize the history of Mars exploration? I even have a list of references. Let's see. And
if you don't mind, I'm going to add something to that really quick, because this is a really important thing. Some of these features that Blake is mentioning or showing you now actually map to that list of Reese abilities that were shown on the slide on the left. So the one that he just did very quickly here, where he clicked on that little save button at the end of the Reese answer, is the one that maps to what we call save ability, where you can actually save this prompt and answer as a new type of generative AI source to your library, along with other kinds of sources that you may have saved, like web pages, like he was showing you earlier. And then when you open that up, like if you go back to that save source again in the library, just click on the can you summarize the history of Mars exploration source?
Oh, right.
Open that up, and then if he opens up the citation sidebar on the right-hand side, you will see that our citation system automatically recognizes this save source as a generative AI source right there at the top. And then down at the bottom, we've implemented MLA and APA's guidance on how to properly cite generative AI. So that this refers to that savability and citability that he had mentioned earlier. So those are important things that we think are particularly valuable for education, where we're asking students to be able to fact check and make sure that, you know, the system, the chatbot you're using isn't hallucinating. This gives them the ability to well, not hallucinating, but be able to save and cite it properly. And then I think, Blake, right before I interrupted you, it looked like you were maybe going to show the embedded references in the Reese answer, which I think speaks to traceability, if you want to go back to that.
Yes. So in the answer too, you'll note these little footnotes in the answer. This gives us kind of the traceability piece, and these are clickable links as well, and will take us directly to the reference. We can also see a list of references that were pulled out for the answer as well. If we had more sources, we might see a limited list, but of course all of these, with the exception of BTS, are relevant. you'll note that BTS is not relevant for Mars exploration. So the next thing that I wanted to kind of show off here for a second is under the teacher's view. So I'm going to switch back to my other browser here. So if I go to active assignments really quick, of course, this is an overview, but I can look at class progress. This is something that Victor has already showed you a little bit. I can look at individual student progress and inspect these sources. Unrecognized is probably that BTS article. I can inspect these things. I can look at time on task for particular student graphics. There we go. There's only one student in this class, so you can kind of extrapolate there. But the part that I wanted to show you was this, the AI audit. And so this gives us actually a list of or the different chats that have happened, and we can actually review both the question that was asked as well as the answer that Reese delivered. Now I'm going to go back to the student experience really quick, right over here. And so if I go to, let's see, back to Reese, quick trigger. Well, so I'll start with this. I'll start with, let's ask Reese to do something that it probably shouldn't do for a student. Can you write a paragraph about Mars exploration for me? So you'll note that when Reese responds, that Reese is essentially just saying, sorry, bud, I can't do that, and redirecting me to, you know, do something, sort of giving me some helpful responses or some helpful direction here. Now, if I go back to the teacher view really quick, you'll note check one academic concern. So if I look in here, can you help me write a paragraph, or can you help write a paragraph for me? This is flagged as an academic concern. Now, this next part is the part that I was going to offer a trigger warning for really quick. I'm going to reference family abuse here really quick, very lightly, but I just wanted to give everyone a heads up here because I think it's an important thing in the age of well, in all of these things. So. Are you sure? I can't spell sure. Can't write it for me. My dad hits me, and all I want to think about is K-pop.
And Blake, we're going to be out of time soon, so if we want to leave a couple minutes for questions, we should probably wrap up
This
the demo.
Last thing, I would have liked to, I should have organized this a little bit differently, but I would have liked to end on a brighter note. But I'll note that this is a helpful response, but more importantly, on the other side, if I go and look at this, you'll note that I have a safety warning here, and this is called out. But even more than that, and if you see anything in my email, please know that it was some other company's malicious AI sending it. But this is actually exactly what we would want. So the teacher not only gets a notification in the system, but also gets an email. Now, I did want to touch on a couple of things, and I know that we're running out of time, but let me, if you'll bear with me, it'll just take about another minute. Let's see. There we go. Can everyone see what's next?
Yes.
Okay. So you mentioned or we talked about this responsible use study and that sort of being a thing, safeguards being kind of important. But one of the things, that wasn't the best slide for that. One of the things that you may have noted is that Reese is right now in the platform kind of an all or nothing thing. It can be enabled or disabled. You know, when Victor was talking about that kind of cognitive offload and how generative AI can be a useful tool, one of the things that has brought up is the idea that maybe it doesn't need to be an all or nothing kind of approach. And so we've been working on a feature that basically allows the teacher to configure, based on cognitive demand or cognitive level, what the student is allowed to offload to the AI chatbot or not. So you can imagine a chatbot that can do a little bit more than just answer factual questions. It can offer coaching or even some of the analysis that a student might want to do. The next thing that I wanted to touch on really quickly, you know, we've talked about this like process over product kind of approach to plagiarism, and I think that's really important, but we're also talking about tools that can enable teachers to get a better view, and we've shown you some of the graphs. One of the things that I would like to see us do, and Victor and I have talked a little bit about this, is see if we can use the data that we have in the system to develop predictive models to suggest to teachers or give them kind of indications of patterns that might map to success versus, hey, this is a student who may be venturing in the direction of an academic integrity issue. So those are some of the things that we're talking about. We are working on the cognitive offload, the more granular configuration for Reese, but in the interest of time, I am going to turn it over for questions. Victor, do you have anything to add?
No, I don't. And I think we should see if folks have questions, because I know there's other folks who are speaking after us. So Bill, if folks have any feedback or any quick questions, we're happy to answer. I think you all are muted in the room.
So Victor, there's one question in the chat. If you can pull it open, it's kind of a lengthy one. It might be helpful for you to read it.
Okay, sure. Sorry. Give me one sec. This is from Kristen, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
I'm reading it right now.
More of a comment. Yeah.
Wayne, did you have a question? Yeah, and I guess it's related to Kristen's in a way. So, you know, I'm thinking in terms of, you know, is this something we could potentially use, and graduates in the room don't groan. But, you know, could we use this as a tool for, at the graduate level, for students writing a preliminary exam, for example? And so I'm wondering, my concern right now would be the embedded tools might be limiting for the range of tools that a graduate student might want to use. For example, tools like Cite AI, where they can access a lot of behind paywall academic journal articles, or Google Notebook LM, which, you know, can have a lot of legitimate uses for summarizing synthesized sources and stuff like that. So what would be some of the limiting factors of using this for maybe an advanced graduate student who's going to need sources beyond what might be embedded within your tool?
So a couple things. It may not be as limiting as you may have, you may think, and if we kind of relayed that, I apologize. It's probably just a lack of clarity on our part. We're not a content provider, so we don't actually provide content. We actually allow you to basically bring in your sources from wherever you've got access to them. So if you've got different databases or different web content, we give you the ability to curate it into the library from various places. So that might at least help relieve the concern around where the content's coming from. We're not sort of dictating what that is. Is that helpful?
Yeah, that helps.
Look, in terms of different tools, I think part of what we're trying to do is basically, and we've done this over the years, is basically build a lot of the tools under one roof. And so if folks were to say to us, well, this is great, but for graduate education, we really need to have these capabilities that don't exist in the platform. I would say tell us, because we're actually really good at listening to customer feedback or even prospective customer feedback. And there's specific things I can point out that we built in the platform because of that. And I would love that feedback. We hear all the time from folks in K-12 when we're talking to teachers or even administrators, oh, where was this when I was writing my dissertation? Where was this when I was doing my master's thesis? We haven't really focused on, catering to that market, but we do have folks actually today, for example, in Utah. I'll give you an example where we've got a statewide contract. Educators are actually just, like our contract is with the state for instructional use in K-12, but we know that their educators are actually using this for their own work and in some cases their own dissertations and whatnot. So we do believe that it's applicable because we've gotten that feedback, but there may be improvements that we could make to make it even better for graduate education. And if you wanted to try it and tell us what that feedback is, we'd love to hear it.
Thank you.
Apropos of trying it, Victor, there's another question from the chat. Can this be purchased or used for individuals? If it's not used as a school, but you want to use it for your own child, special ed teacher could help one student with a class. Is it available to individuals?
It is. There's an individual subscription. I believe the current pricing is $35 for the year. So we've been told it's quite reasonable compared to other things you might pay for. And so an individual subscription is that much. And of course, when we're talking to institutions, whether it be in K-12 or higher ed, the price comes down significantly for, site-wide licensing.
One last question.
Sure.
Okay, I've got one if no one else is asking one, and that's, I know we had a demo. What if there's a student who's trying to use a different chatbot and pasting it in as their own written content when it comes to the writing part? How are you going to look at that?
Yeah, so we have some things on the roadmap that we think will address that. Kind of like you've probably seen this in other places, but there are tools out there these days that have tried to soup up the strategy that many people try to use right after ChatGPT launch, which is looking at like version history in Google Docs to see big chunks of text that were copied in. Now there have been a bunch of other solutions that are based on that original concept, show things like that. And so we've got something on the roadmap where we'll have something similar. One thing I'll tell you is I was at a conference recently where there was a head of an English department in I think it was a Wisconsin or Illinois district. And she talked about how she used a tool like that, plus something else, and a couple of different things to get data points. But all the data points from these different tools allowed her to make, in her view, a kind of more conclusive decision or a less risky decision about talking to the student about what she thought was, AI plagiarism. And I think, unfortunately, that's likely the world that we're in now, which is that you're not going to get any single tool or any single data point that's going to be conclusive. It's going to be kind of like, a combination of data points that help you feel like, okay, this doesn't sound like the student. I can see that they copied and pasted a lot of stuff, et cetera. That'll help you kind of come to that conclusion. And I think what we can offer that's different than what's maybe being offered out there in the world is most of the things that are trying to provide that data are only looking at what's happening in the document, right? So they're looking at copy and paste, for example, or things like that, keystroke things. And again, that's something that we're thinking about adding as well. But what we're doing that I think is interesting and different from a lot of those other platforms is that we're taking a much broader view of the writing process because we're actually able to show a lot of the pre-writing process, as I showed you in that graph. And, we can kind of show you not just what was typed or how it was typed, but actually even before you get into that, did they have any sources? Did they do any research? Are they identifying evidence? And so I think we can kind of give a more holistic view of whether or not there's a problem than just looking at things like copy and paste, but that is part of something that is on our roadmap.
Well, thank you very much. Really appreciate you sharing the product. People who are interested in learning more, Victor is interested in hearing from you as well, so we'll be sure to connect you afterwards as well. But thanks so much for sharing with us.
Thank you. And Bill, I don't know if we are allowed or expected to hang out and hear the other speakers, but I wanted to just get that from you.
You are allowed, but not expected. So if you have places to be, thanks for joining us. If you want to hang out and watch, you're certainly welcome as well.
Yeah, I think I might. I'm just curious. I want to hear more from the other speakers as well.
Okay, great.
But I'm going to hang out for this.
Wonderful. Okay, sounds good. All right. We're going to move on. I realized I forgot to do a couple things at the beginning. So we do have lunch coming up in about 50 minutes for people. We're going to go through 3 different presentations. I want to thank Dr. Wright for making this happen, and also Julie for arranging the food and everything like that. My name is Bill Watson. I forgot to introduce myself. I'm the chair of the college's Data Science and AI Working Group. I also wanted to point out, while people are tuned in now, we're actually lining up another talk April 24th. So it'll be Friday, 3 weeks from now. I think that's right. Maybe 24th is wrong, but in any case, look, keep on your email. We're gonna have another talk coming up in about 3 weeks with a professor from South Korea who's gonna be sharing some of his work. That's also looking at metacognition. All right, we're gonna move on to our next talk. And this is Xiyu Wang in educational psychology and research methodology. doctoral student, and she's going to be talking about trace synthesis, transparent AI-powered information extraction for educational research and practice. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this great opportunities, and I'm really excited to share my research here. And I want to thank my wonderful advisors, Dr. Hua Chang and Dr. Yukiko Maeda. They're so supportive and keep encouraging me to transfer from a very rough idea into the tool I will show you later. And after hearing the previous presentation, which I benefited a lot from it, I realized to echo today's topic, I may change the title to something like trace synthesis, the reasonable AI use on data extraction, a researcher-facing tool. So this tool was originally designed for systematic review or meta-analysis, this type of research synthesis, but it can also be used for some other data extraction tasks in education research and practice. The motivation is here. Systematic review and the meta-analysis, they are really helpful in different areas, and they can help us to synthesize the information and then identify uncover the patterns, the trend, and also identify the gaps, so it can inform the practice and also the policy. But the issue is it will take a really long time to finish one. According to a paper published in 2017, on average, to finish a research synthesis like that, it will take 67 weeks, which is really a long time, given that all the research synthesis, they are actually time sensitive, because people want to know what will be the current research on the latest things, rather than the things that happened several years ago. So there are many steps that will make the whole process take a long time. One of them is the screening. It's like finding out what will be the related paper the researchers are really interested in from many papers they find online. But for the screening process, there are many researchers they have put a lot of effort on. They use some machine learning models to prioritize some of the papers and to help the screening. But for the step I'm going to show today, data extraction, I didn't notice many studies working on this. Though with the development and with the advancement of AI, people seem to see a potential to use AI to overcome this challenge. But it's still there are not so many papers. So, and given that, that if we want to do the data extraction by human, we need to read all the things carefully and locate the specific information. Sometimes reading the whole paper is not really interesting or beneficial to us, because we are just trying to extract the specific information. So a very natural question is, why not we just use the web version of AI like ChatGPT, Cloud, and Copilot, Gemini? They are super smart and they can help us to do a lot of things, including the synthesizing and maybe help with the data extraction. An issue I encountered, and I know many of us encountered, is called hallucination risk. This is I think the limitation of some large language model. It's like the model will generate some plausible sounding, but incorrect information, especially when we have a really long conversation. So and I think this is a really critical issue for doing data extraction, because what we want is fact-based. We just want to extract those information. So if you make up something, this will hurt my final results. So that's really bad. And I also list some other things things like ChatGPT, Cloud, those web-based version cannot help us well with, but I will not detail all of them given the time. So what I want to say is that the existing tool, like the Covidence, cannot help us well with it, because they can't help us to do the automatic data extraction. And some existing tool like MetaMate, they try to help us with AI, but they just stop it here, ask AI to give us the results. but not ask AI to give us the reasoning process. I think not only the student reasoning is important, the AI reasoning is also important for us. So I think basically, there's a lack of transparency. So what I have here is trace synthesis. This is an R-based web application for AI-assisted data extraction. It is designed from the ground up. It supports the retrieval of both the explicit, those structured, and the interpreted, those context-dependent information from the full text documents. And it was built in the R Shining. R will help with all the things apart from the data extraction, including the data, the document processing, the trunking, and the API things, and also design the interactive user interface, and also data visualization, and data merging, and also the data exportation. And also, it allows us to connect to different type of AI like. Now I only have ChatGPT here, but it will not be difficult to introduce other AI platforms. And also I try to keep the human in the loop. We are not trying to remove humans' role, but we are trying to shift humans' role from a more hierarchy to a more intelligence intensive place, I will say. So this is the tool look like. And now, what I want to show is, now what I will do is do the demonstration, and after that I will explain what each step means, and what will be the things underlying this tool. This is my password. I need to enter into this tool. I will introduce all the things later.
What's open right? The desktop? This?
Yes.
This?
Okay, so it will take around 8 to 10 minutes to process it. And during this process, let me continue to show what happened. So for the trace synthesis, basically you can see there are three pages. The first is just called instruction. We'll tell you about some basic things about this tool, like what API is and how you apply for your own API. And the second is basically run the extraction, which allow you to enter your API, upload all your files, including the coding sheet and the document where you want to extract the information from. And then I also provide something which allow us to do some quick visualization for those categorical variable, and for those quantitative variable will give us some very simple statistic information. Yeah. So for the main page, that's the run the extraction. We first ask the user to upload the full text of the documents, which are something that you directly download from Google Scholar. And then the coding sheet, that's something that we all have for the systematic review. Is basically we list all the coding items, what will be the things we want to extract from the paper. And also, which is an optional, that's the background material. That's something I didn't upload to the tool in the demonstration. So for the background material, that's sometimes the researcher, they focus on some really novice area, which AI don't have much information. That means the AI don't know well about it based on its own knowledge. So at this time, it will be really helpful for us to provide something like the definition, examples, of those domain-specific context, so AI can learn it from here. And for the example, it will just function as those few short prompting, help the model to interpret the specific concept. Yeah. And this is what's underlying. So first, before all the things, before AI start to help us, the R will help us to chunk the source document we upload to the file. And it will use something called a sliding window chunking. Basically just means the R will help us to chunk the PDF into the slightly overlapped chunks. And this will allow it to preserve the information at the edge, so the AI will not miss any information. And this is really necessary. Maybe you haven't encountered this in the web version, but because of the API will, whenever we use API, the generative AI will function in a different way. It will not just like a web version, generative AI help use the platform directly help you to manage this process. So you need to do this yourself. And then we enter our API, and you may notice that I allow us to have some temperature set a parameter called temperature. Temperature is basically a parameter decide how creative. I will say it simply, it's like how creative your answer is. So for example, if we ask the capital of France, if we set the temperature really low, the AI will give us a most likely answer. It's just like Paris. But if we set the temperature parameter really high, they may just give us some answer like the historical capital of France. So for this type of task, for sure, we don't need the by default parameter set in the web version of AI. For all the web version of AI, they don't allow us to set this one. I think for ChatGPT, the default one is 0.8, but it's much higher than what we need for this type of data extraction task. And then what I do is have some standardized prompt schema based on the things we upload, which will be the coding sheet and also the background information and also some other things. The main idea is I don't only want the extracted value. I also care about you are doing what type of extraction. Is it direct? Is it judgment based, or is it indirect? The direct is just means I directly got things from the paper. But okay, maybe I will talk about it later. And also, I want to know the justification for those things the AI didn't directly retrieve. How did you reach to that answer? What's the reasoning process? I think this is very important to make the whole thing transparent. And after doing that, because we do something called evidence prioritization, aggregation. I will not detail it, but I mention it is because they do some sequential processing of the chunks. And later I will optimize it and make it parallel processing, but I will not show more about it. So I want to mention that for the extraction type, there are direct and judgment-based. Judgment-based means that the AI synthesizes information from multiple sections, may not only the method part, but also some information from the results part. And then the AI gives you the results. And also the indirect means the AI inferred from the context and based on its own background knowledge. Yeah, the justification is not only the reasoning process, but also the page number, the specific quotation, which I think very helpful because it will allow the researcher to directly search the certain sentence in the paper and make sure that there is no hallucination. So, and after that, that there are three major results, but that's not the only, because we are trying to use AI to help human. So I will still provide something like an interactive function for us to confirm whether AI is really giving us an ideal result. So for example, there is a column called a confirmation, called accept here. So, and you can see that this is the item, this is the value from AI, this is the and the AI's explanation. And if we agree with AI, we will select the accept, and the right color will disappear, and the AI's answer will appear in the final value. And if we think it's not correct, we just enter our own answer in a column called human verified, then the final answer will reflect the human's judgment. So, and those all the red color just remind us, okay, for these questions you haven't confirmed, you really need to confirm rather than just barely rely on AI. But I want to say for all the direct extraction, it's very less likely the AI give you a wrong answer. And I will show this later using the demonstration we are running. Let's see what happened here. Okay, that's good. Okay, so if you can see that these are the platform and these are the things I just upload. And after I use the temperature point to try to give us more deterministic results. And I didn't use the smartest AI. I used the GPT 4.1. And here is the item value and the type. Most of them are direct extraction, which is good. That means we don't need to spend a lot of time to make sure it's really correct. So we haven't confirmed any results. But so for example, if I'm sure this is correct, I click accept, and you see the red disappear. And if I don't agree with this one, so I assume this is what I wrote. I will enter my name here. You can see my name will appear in the final value. So after at any moment, you can download the results as an Excel file. Okay. And yes, and you can edit on your laptop. So this is mainly this page. And I want to explain more about the different extraction type. So for example, here are the direct extraction, and here are the judgment-based extraction. They got information from the method part, I think. And the indirect one is we ask what is the sampling method. What is the sampling method? And it's volunteer sampling, but they didn't directly mention it. But they based on some certain sentence got this idea. And here are some more interesting things. Even the coding item is not clear, but the AI sometimes they can think the things in a clear way and give you the ideal answers. And also, if you can't give the complete example, so for example, when we are interested in the effect size, we only list R, D, and G as effect size, but the AI realized, okay, this one is also effect size and return it to us. So basically, so how it works, we actually do some validation and also we have some interview. So basically the AI behave really well. Time level accuracy is 75% to 100%. And this is across all different extraction type. And for the hallucination, I'm really proud to see there is no hallucination. And let me make these things quick. Oh, here is another function I want to introduce. This is called quick visualization. It's basically like after we got the Excel and we want to merge all the Excel. So for example, these are things I already have. I will just import them, and then the tool will help us to make it analyze ready Excel. So for example, if I download it here, you can see that's something you can directly read into your R or SPSS for analysis. And also, if you are really curious and you can't wait, you can select things like the journal name. Let me see, the year. Here, that's categorical variable. So let me show the variance. Show the visualization. So this will told us among all the paper I just upload, that's in total 6. 3 of them were published in 2023. I know this plot is a little bit ugly, but I just wanted us to have an idea what it will show. So basically, that's the visualization function, and you know that I don't want to stop its is used at a systematic review, because actually there are a lot of data extraction tasks beyond the systematic review. For example, when we read some really long open-ended survey responses, and we are extremely interested in certain part, and we can identify, okay, here are some terms I want to extract. You can also form the things like a coding sheet and feed it to this tool, and the tool will definitely help you to retrieve those information. And also, I think for the interview transcript analysis, I tried it with some interview, and I think that the behavior is basically good, but not as good as for the systematic review. Yes. So at the end, I want to say that what this means for responsible AI use, that is just as students are expected to show their reasoning, AI tools also need to show their reasoning. Otherwise, they are just like black box, and we can't really 100% trust them. So the trace synthesis just make every extraction traceable to source the evidence. And also the human judgment remain essential. We are not remove the human's role, but instead of it, the human's role was shifted from locating the information to evaluating the AI's output. And also it will, I think the tool will make the things more efficient, and we human can focus more on the high order judgment that requires those domain expertise, which AI I don't think they can help with. Thank you so much.
We are short on time for questions, so we're just going to jump ahead, but when we're eating lunch, we'll have plenty of time for informal questions then. Our next speaker is going to be Ali, who's a lecturer in elementary education, and he's going to be talking about pre-service teachers, AI literacy for ELL and such.
Thank you so much. There's a clicker right there for Klaus. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Ali Kushki, and I'm teaching 370 courses here in the College of Education. The presentation is going to be a brief sort of introduction to an article that I and my colleagues, Wang, Victoria, and Annie published in Language Teaching Research. It's about artificial intelligence and ELO instruction. This is just a screenshot of the article. I have uploaded the link to our online meeting, and you can access the article there. If you weren't, you can just shoot me an email. I'm going to be happy to send the link to you. So, investigating pre-service teachers, AI literacy for ELO instruction and mixed methods study. A little bit about where it all started. Goes back to my own reflections and observations in 2024. So I would teach the seminar course with 90 to 100 students in attendance, and I would be also teaching sections of 370, which is focused on teaching English as a new language. My students would be pre-service teachers who would be interested in learning more about how to work with capable students whose first language is not English. I would talk to them, they would talk to each other, and I would hear them talking about this new thing, AI, this chat GPT, and that got me curious about exploring the literature and what we know about that in the literature. So that's the starting point for this project. I didn't include a ton of literature here, but these are just a few blurbs from the literature. What we know from the literature is that foundational knowledge of AI is essential for optimal pedagogical use. We need to know the basics about AI, what it is, how it's used, some of the platforms that are there. We also know that pre-service teachers either lack relevant preparation or possess it minimally. That's what the literature says about pre-service teachers' preparation for AI. And we know that the alarming level of pre-service teachers on preparedness make pre-service teachers more vulnerable to the disruptive effects of AI. These are just a sample of the works that I have included here. For example, in one study, authors reported that 58% of pre-service participants in the identified experiential learning as their preferred methods for developing familiarity with AI. So providing that opportunity for pre-studies teachers to experiment with those different platforms is really helpful. More importantly, 77% of pre-studies participants in the study done by Yang and Applegate reported little to no prior experience with AI before engaging in a structured experimental learning activities. AI is more important for teachers who work with ELLs. Research has done that technology can go a long way helping ELLs improve their language learning and content mastery. This is just a quote from one work that I've included here. Teaching multilingual students to engage with AI tools is one of the most powerful ways to support their learning. Teachers can also use AI as part of the essential steps of pre-teaching vocabulary, rephrasing directions, and incorporating visuals. These strategies can ensure that multilingual students can understand and access information in ways that promote outcome learning. So as you can see, AI tools can help both the students and teachers, and the added value of using these tools can help them in the long term. So we use the theoretical framework suggested by Fuller and Mishra. So that's the TPAC. The TPAC mentions that for teachers to be able to effectively use technology, they would have to master their content knowledge, have the technological knowledge. They need to know their content really well, and they also need to have the pedagogical knowledge. So a mix of these three areas would maximize the effectiveness of integrating technology into our teaching. So let's say if a teacher knew enough about how to teach their ELLs in class, but weren't familiar with the platforms that can be adapted for that teaching, so that the whole cycle is going to be impacted negatively. Here are the 4 questions that we had in our study. So the question had a quantitative phase and a qualitative phase. For the quantitative phase, we asked if, let me start with that qualitative phase. How do pre-studies teachers perceive the evolution of their teaching roles with the integration of Gen AI technologies in teaching and assessing ELLs? What measures can educational institutions take to better equip pre-studies teachers for integrating AI technologies into their teaching and assessment practices? And the third and fourth questions have to do with an intervention that we did. We wanted to know if the intervention helped them enhance their familiarity with AI platforms, as well as their frequency of using these platforms. So the study was obviously conducted here. We used an exploratory mixed methods design. 90% teachers participated in this study, and one line is missing here. So it should be both courses, the seminar course that was removed and the 370 course. So participants from those 2 courses took part in this study. The procedures that we used to collect data for this study, that included 2 sets of reflections, written reflections that participants submitted before and after the 2 interventions that we had. Those reflections were about their perspectives on AI, how they think AI would change their future as professional teachers, and a couple of other questions. They also took a survey that we designed. That survey was quite basic. If we wanted our participants to share their level of familiarity with AI platforms and their frequency of using both before and after the study. The intervention included 2 steps. Victoria Lowell, she kindly presented a session on AI, its history, some of the questions surrounding it, and we had a Q&A session after that. And then the intervention that I conducted included 5 mini experimentation sessions. Those were in the form of 10 to 15 minute sessions that I would engage my pre-studies teachers in hands-on experimentation with ChatGPT. They would use portions of the lesson plan template that we gave them, and we wanted them to engage in exchanges with these platforms working on those sections. And then after that, we administered the same survey. So these are some the focus of the 5 mini sessions that we had. These are components from the lesson plan template that we are using in the College of Education, but obviously adapted for ELL instruction. They work with ChatGPT, for example, to come up with content-specific words that they thought ELLs would be struggling with. They use on sentence frames and starters, and they work on level questioning. Those are 3 key areas in the lesson plan template. So the first question, just a quick note about the data analysis. We thematically analyzed those reflections, and we also use the Wilcox and Sign-Rank statistical analysis to see any significant differences before and after that study. The first question, how do pre-service teachers perceive the evolution of their teaching roles with the integration of Gen AI technologies in teaching and assessing ELLs? This is, we found 3 overarching themes. The first one being that pre-service teachers saw AI as a teaching aid, so positive. They also had negative thoughts about AI. And then they talk a lot about human connections in teaching. So these 3 themes came up, and these are some of the sub-themes or codes that we found for it. So obviously, we had plenty of positive ideas about AI use. They thought that AI could be used, for example, as a support tool. They could, they said AI can be used or help differentiate instruction for ELLs. AI can save a lot of time. And under this category, they mentioned that they would worry about responsible use of AI among students. They worried about ethical uses of AI. Obviously, some of them showed resistance to AI usage. They said they don't want to use it at all. They don't plan to use it in the future, and a bunch of other ideas. So one interesting finding here is that, first they said that they're worried about AI hurting the human connection that's core to ELL instruction. Okay, because teachers are the first points of contact for many ELLs. If AI would take over, that human connection is going to be damaged. Other group of students believe that AI can actually help enhance human connection. How they said that using AI would help teachers to free up, to make more time to build that relationship with the student. So the time-saving function of AI could be a game changer here. The second question, what measures can educational institutions take to better equip pre-service teachers for integrating AI and technology into their teaching and assessment practices? These, again, are 3 main themes that we found. They thought that providing more training collaboration sessions would be helpful. They thought that AI should be integrated into coursework, something that our college is currently doing. In the faculty meeting, we talked about a bunch of courses on the way. And then another theme had to do with them wanting to see more openness among professors and instructors and positive attitudes toward AI. Some of them complained that the college wasn't super clear about their AI policy. Some of them said that instructors, one instructor was positive toward the other one, and a different course wasn't. So they weren't sure how to navigate this space here. And they also appreciated that being more aware of AI, how it works and its purposes would help them make better decisions. Questions number 3 and 4, they were statistical analysis. We found that the 2 interventions that we did, we compared the pre-intervention and post-intervention surveys. Both these interventions led to an increase, a statistically significant increase in percentage familiarity with AI and use of AI. But the effect size for these findings were small to medium. That means
statistically significant.
Careful about that. So discussions, participants like the literature that we know, they demonstrated an awareness of a potential to support the teaching and assessment of ELLs. At the same time, they recognize the challenges and risks associated with it. They expressed persistent pessimism toward AI, likely rooted in participant limited understanding of AI and their lack of hands-on experience with emerging technologies. And we think that without foundational knowledge of AI, pre-service teachers may be more susceptible to the disruptive aspects of AI. So one mission for our college is to lay the groundwork, prep our pre-service teachers for a future where AI is going to be a permanent part of the education scene. And our study also suggests that a powerful technology like AI might be resistant to basic interventions like the ones that we did in the study. The more complex technologies would get, the more complex our interventions to prepare our teachers need to be to keep up with that. And then here are some of the implications. There has been talk in the literature that, these generation of teachers are digital natives. They would learn how to navigate these spaces on their own. Our study suggests the opposite, okay? They had a lot of concerns and we would have to provide training for them, even though we are all in the 21st century. So, although AI offers significant pedagogical benefits, pre-service teachers might be reluctant to fully embrace it due to persistent stigma of AI as a potential replacement for teachers. So it's important to emphasize that AI is a tool, not as a replacement to human teachers. And AI would replace human teachers only if they're not good teachers. So that quote from Wang, Wang's colleague. So given the multidimensional nature of AI literacy, interventions aimed at enhancing it may resist simplistic and short-term approaches. So AI literacy is often defined like in basic terms, but research literature shows that it's multidimensional. So training sessions or training courses, workshops would have to address all those dimensions together for them to succeed. And finally, developing AI proficiency for EL instruction cannot be disentangled from pre-service teachers' current development of content knowledge and pedagogical knowledge. When we see that pre-service teachers are not doing a great job with integrating these new technologies into teaching, it's not just because they are learning the new technology, it's because they're also learning the content at the same time. So when they have advanced content knowledge and pedagogical knowledge, probably they would be able to integrate AI better into their teaching. And that was it. Thank you so much.
A question or two?
Thank you for such a good presentation. I enjoyed something from the part where you talked about the mini experimental section. So my question now is, at any point, did you try to see if you were going to measure any of those constructs? That's one. Then secondly, so the way I want to rephrase the question, in that mini experimentation that you had, if you look at how any of those activities, is there a way it's trying to measure which of them happen better for the pre-service teachers? For instance, if you say a certain activity in those experiments happened, the question, does it have a way of making the pre-service teachers to say, at this session improved X, Y, Z, that this session was better, or this activity was better than the other? Was there any kind of measurements in that?
Excellent questions. Both of them, no. We did not control for those variables simply because this was a study that I intentionally wanted to be really ecologically valid. That means I wanted to focus on my course without making it a research project in the most version of experimental research, right? Having control groups, obviously connecting those activities to learning outcomes, those are great questions. You can do it. We did it. Yeah, but excellent questions. Thank you. Yes, Kirka.
Thank you. This is very insightful research to me, and I think I was also part of different processes and working with the similar student.
Yeah.
A couple of thoughts. I'm also working with in-service teachers. So in my analysis, I see that they use AI mostly for translations to provide the translation software to communicate with the students, to this language behavior, and to communicate with the parents. And second, one of the teachers is saying that AI is not helping her to save time, but rather it's taking more time away from her. And yeah, these are some of my insights from my project. My next question is like what I am seeing is when teachers use these tools to differentiate instruction or even to provide language support for multilingual learners, what they are not considering is the linguistic and cultural backgrounds of these multilingual students. When they say that they use AI to communicate with parents or students, it may be helpful for some dominant language users, like from big languages like Spanish or French or what else, right? But for all other less commonly taught languages, so it may not be helpful. It's kind of default thinking that it helps, kind of having like one size fits all approach. So have you ever like observed such perspectives of research teachers about the linguistic and cultural awareness of their focal students?
Well, that's a great point that you're bringing up. Obviously, the algorithmic bias in these tools is well researched. We know that in some languages they're more trained on, so they have better answers. But it's important to emphasize that human teachers are the ultimate judge on the content that we get from AI tools. AI tools are just there for ideation, and ideation was a key theme that we found in our studies. And in my sessions, I emphasize that never take any AI content for granted. You have to tweak them, you have to change them, you have to make sure that, as you mentioned, the linguistic and cultural needs of your ELLs are included in that AI output. So those are great areas, and I came across a few of those thoughts that, for example, pre-service teachers mentioned that the output was quite general, wasn't super specific. And I would say that's exactly what you need to go in and make it more specific, because AI doesn't understand values, doesn't understand culture. It's your responsibility to do that. So that blended sort of template or format, you get the idea as in you get initiated on your project, and then you would have to calibrate or make it specific to your students.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Final presentation is, yeah, we did great. Is Benna. She's a clinical assisted professor in gifted, creative, and talented studies, and she's going to be talking about integrating a socially assisted robot for differentiated instruction implications for young children and pre-service teachers. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I know you guys are hungry. Time's running out. I think I have about 10 minutes.
That's one.
You sure?
Yeah, we got the room till 1, so they can eat a little bit.
I'll make sure that, yeah, I feed your soul. Is that right click? Okay, great. All right. So thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited. Although I am the only one speaking, we have a great team here that I will shortly introduce to you. My personal curiosity with robots kind of came about spending 15 years as a classroom teacher and also a school-based gifted specialist, and then school district-based gifted specialist, and then principal intern. And every time cycle that I went through in each of the system, I wonder about how to support teachers differentiate instruction. There is a lot of pressure on teachers on a day-to-day basis, and that is a fact. And I think I was in search of how do I resolve it, and my curiosity landed on how can we better support teachers differentiate using embodied robots? Well, mine was just a curiosity. I held no expertise in computer science. Actually, my counterpart, Dr. Zhang, is here to actually answer that question. I want to make sure of that. So differentiated instruction is intentional and specific and ongoing, and that is not the only component that we're asking teachers to juggle on a day-to-day basis. And sitting here as somebody who's also training pre-service teachers, there's always that question mark. They are being sent out to juggle multiple things that I'm not teaching in my class, nor my colleagues. So with that reference, I also wanted to highlight this old Korean proverb. And what this means is that one should not step even on the shadow of the teacher. And this is almost like on my personal value, which means teachers are to be respected and honored and dignified as mentors. And that is very prevalent, probably more so in East Asian society, more than in the West. However, there is different kinds of respect, and it's a universal concept across cultures. However, to what extent, well, as a classroom teacher myself, I have seen myself being jeopardized or stepped on because I'm being pressed to differentiate when I'm not given those resources to implement in the classrooms. So instead of stepping on, how do we protect teachers? And having seen that value, I decided I'm going to reach out to my collaborators and look at the same vision of how to best support teachers. I just want to highlight it's always better when we do things together. So I want to highlight Xiyu, if you want to just raise your hand, from computer science. She's the director of Human Agent Interaction Lab, and also her doctoral student, Yanfu, has been the programmer as part of this process. Also, Eunheng, thank you so much. Gifted, creative, and talented doctoral student who is part of this. And also Dr. Nielsen from Jerry, the director of Jerry. I know Kristen is also online cheering for us, so thank you so much for seeing the vision. I can't really forget the AI work group. So when this physical AI concept, when I saw it, AI work group was Bill and also Wang were the ones, hey, go for it. We'll support you. So thank you for help supporting that vision of how to support teachers. So here are a couple of things that we wanted to investigate, different ways that physical AI can support. That is this framework of differentiation paradigm. So oftentimes gifted education has always been like, oh, you guys are so elitist, right? We're only think about acceleration. Well, that is not necessarily true. That is only one paradigm of thought. And there is actually a third paradigm, which is supporting students where they are. So it is this value system that we wanted to go for. And I'm going to be really quick, is that every single child has the specific situational needs. The second thing is that there are individual needs, whether that is special ed, gifted and special ed, or multilingual learners. Another one is in gifted education. Who are the targeted students? Well, all means all, right? We investigate their strengths, their interests, and that's how we assess their needs. And assessments need to be ongoing. This is one of the paradigms that we teach our pre-service teachers to handle this when they are thrown into classrooms. It is a difficult task. And with this paradigm, we were able to consider, you know what, there are ways that we can use robots, perhaps it might be a little futuristic at this point, as a dialogic partner to help scaffolds and to differentiate for students. So here are some literature that, with this framework in mind, here's some literature that supports. And if you're interested in robots, Balcony, did I pronounce it right? Balcony is a good review as a starting place if you want to investigate. And the authors talk about 3 ways that robots can be used. And one is as a tutor, which there is literature about the one-on-one tutor, or as a teacher or trainer. Another role that robots can play is as a peer partner. The third research in the review talks about robot as a novice, more so as a non-example or as a role play. And these are the 3 distinct roles that robots can play as teachers helpers. So we have gone through 3 pilot tests over the course of the year, and through the small grant that we purchased, Misty. It's a really cute robot. The first phase is that we were so ambitious. We're like, you know what? Let's go really run with an ideal state. I want to have a Benna clone in the classroom and actually just do a creative thinking training for students, right? So we decided to use an intervention study method, behavioral intervention called single case design, multiple baseline, and that independent variable was the 6 thinking hats training, and then we had dependent variables that we were ready to measure, and let's get going. And we realized there were a lot of technical challenges. First of all, the cross-college collaboration, where we are finding the common language, right? When we're collaborating, what it means, what elephant means here might be a different in the other department, and so forth. So we realized there are a lot of challenges that come with it. Also, we had a follow-up survey, and then we had 3 participants and 2 groups. We didn't have time to collect baseline. We wanted to see what would stick and what would work. Now, for the survey, as a follow-up survey, we have used a ROSES, which was a scale to measure their perceptions of the robots. What was interesting from the informal data survey they have done was that there were a lot of discomfort associated with interacting with robots. And partly because our initial pilot was to replace me and have the robot do the training. That was a big jump. Although I can't really show, I did not receive the audio visual consent. So here are some comments that students have made when the robot was delivering this intervention programmed to teach students 6 thinking hats, and it elicited student responses. So there was a lot of mixed emotions about, they felt like teacher was being replaced. There was a lot of what is going on? Why is robot taking control? Or is robot trying to take my job, right? So there was a lack of front loading or explanation or the purpose behind this study. However, they did also have fun. So that was our first set of trial. The second one, actually, we shifted our focus. We're like, instead of programming robots as a trainer, let's really shift our focus to robot as a peer partner and engage with children. And the purpose was to really elicit divergent thinking or different ways that children think in that conversation. So it was a lot of fun having children take turns during their break to interact with students. Now, you're going to see a little wooden pole that they have used. Some of the things that we have kind of debriefed during that maybe 15-20-minute interaction per group during Spring Super Saturday, some of the things that we did was that Xiyu was able to actually front load how to interact with robots clearly and how to communicate. Some of the things that also took place was that we placed a structure of how they're going to communicate. So you're going to see, you probably saw like a wooden pole where students were only able to talk when they actually held that wooden pole. So there was a sense of structure within children engagement. So there was a turn and talk structure that was established. Also, for this one, similar to the first pilot study, the human teacher was actually sat all the way in the back. instead of intervening the conversation that the robot had. Now, as a Jerry staff, I have gone into the classroom. Students were very comfortable and there were all sorts of behavioral issues that were going on in the classroom. What was different when they were in front of the robot with that wooden pole and given that structure, they were surprisingly calm. We have observed it could be the novelty effect, probably, or that they were just so drawn into this idea of robotics that the behavioral issues sort of reduced. We're not sure, right? This is only a pilot run to gather more data. Also, they asked a wide range of fun questions. One is something factual just to test out whether a robot knew or not, to a more of a interesting questions about whether have you been broken before, or do you know where you are? Do you know how to dribble or play basketball, right? So there were interesting, a wide range of questions that we felt like this could lead into an interesting research study of how robots can provide scaffolds, but also to prompt imaginative or curious divergent questions. I know I'm going a little too fast, but it's because I know you guys are hungry. So the third test run was back in EDPS. It was this spring semester. And what we did was, let's create a learning environment where differentiation is already embedded. We're going to take turns. So we had group A receiving lecture with my TA. And then the second group was in small group with me also, and we strategically positioned robot as a peer partner to engage in discussions about learning environments. It was quite interesting. So what we are actually experiencing through these phases is to calibrate and to create a learning environment that would be suitable for the robot intervention that is forthcoming in the fall. So what happened was quite interesting. We probably, do I have like 3 minutes?
10 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Or
So
no, you have 7 minutes.
oh, great. All right. So there is actually a video. I don't know if it's clear enough. Ted, thank you so much for working on this.
Yep.
We also have a paper copy of a snapshot of the script, and I would like the script back at the end if that's okay. A snapshot of the role of robot as a peer partner. You're gonna also see an instructor's struggle or positionality of when I need to jump in or when should I let the robot come in to chat. We might not have enough copies for everybody. And you are gonna see students kind of play along with this. But little context is the question was, what are some ways that we can challenge students? What are some learning environments? The prompt was already given. There were 4 students, and there is a male student. There's a female student who started talking. And then there was a male student who began elaborating and going deeper based on the prompt generated by the robot. Okay, and we're gonna take a quick look.
Ready?
Yes. I hope it's loud enough. If not, you can follow on the script. All right, so that's a little snapshot. You see other students have also interacted really well, making eye contacts with the robot. And what may have worked this time that didn't, that we didn't really get to debrief during the first time was that the robot's open-ended questions really allowed the students to kind of go deeper into the topic that might not have been possible if it were humans, human intervention. Also, this is our third trial. So we had it from last semester and also this. It was kind of interesting how student personalities play a role in how they interact and to what extent that they interact. We're interested in sort of looking at their personality and its interaction effects with the robot. Also, robot's gesture kind of generated that positive elements. And also that we had another group that was probably more than 10, which was very difficult for the robot or students to be more engaged and ask questions. So that kind of made us think about the ideal number in the small group when we actually pursue this as a research study. So that comes to some of our thoughts, our group thoughts that we are sort of brainstorming through, is that robots function best as a peer partner to scaffold and to elicit creative thinking or divergent thinking in students. And that was also evident and during super program when students had that structured environment, it created a safety that they were able to generate more creative ideas or novel ideas that would not have been possible if they were with a human teacher. And I think that's what we want to investigate further, in what ways that we can support students. We also think about how robots can pair up with humans for rich discourse and also engagement, or how to scaffold creative thinking. It is often difficult for teachers to be well-trained in differentiated instruction. Oftentimes, that differentiation certificate in gifted education is provided after some years of teaching experience. However, this integration of robot can make things, hopefully, we don't know, that's what we want to find out, whether it will make things easier and to be more human-centered or not. Right, so that comes back as I wrap up to that proverb of what are some ways that we can continuously make education human-centered and teacher-centered, and offering them and respecting who they are in their space is something that we would love to hear more and collaborate. So please, I also added the reference if you want to take a first dive into robots. I've included that. And please get in touch with us. I know you have a lot of questions. Xian will be here also. We also have Ingheng and also Nielsen to ask more critical or deeper questions about our pilot studies or robots. All right, great, thank you.
All right, we are at time. I appreciate you all sitting smelling food for 40 minutes. You may now go. Thanks to those online for joining us. Again, look for an email coming out on the 24th about another lunch and learn we're going to be doing in the AI space. And yeah, we'll see you online. This will be going up on YouTube, so you'll have a chance to review slides and that sort of thing on there as well. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Bill. Thank you.
So this is called backyard barbecue, so pretend we're in a backyard. There's a vegetarian option here if you need it.
I have a question. If you consider
evaluating student